Okay, my friends, time for an update and a much nicer one since the last time. The decal episode might be fixed. The decals that I've made are working very well. I've ordered the decal sheet or the paper, whatever you wanna call it, from the States. It's from Microscale and it is fantastic. Of course, the only problem you have is that since it's white paper, you must trim the decal very carefully so you don't leave any white edges on it. But it goes flawlessly. I mean, if you look at it, it looks very good. So I think I've got away with this problem, and I'm glad I've scanned the decal sheet, because in one of my videos somebody asked me for the decals for exactly the front fender and one for the fuel tanks, and I'm glad I scanned it, because I always like to help, and in this case I was able to. So let's move on. As you can see, front suspension is all put together, and I'm not really, I don't like the most of Harley Davidsons, but I mean, it looks fantastic at this point. It's so eye-catching. I don't know, I've made the Kawasaki before, and it's a bike, but in this case it's really, it calls your attention. You can stop, look at it. I don't know if it's the chrome parts, the color, I don't know, but it's really eye-catching, as I've said. But let's go for another problem that I came across with, and it was a problem with the exhaust system, because you have an exhaust pipe from this side and another one here. Don't mind my little improvised stand here, because the bike doesn't have it, because it is a bike with a sidecar, so you don't put the stand. So at this point I had to solve the problem, because the bike wouldn't stand for itself, so I've adapted this clamp here to support it. But as I was saying, the exhaust pipe from this side must match with this one from this side, and it wasn't the case. So what I had to do, I had to almost disassemble the whole bike. I mean, I took out the exhaust, of course, the front suspension came out, rear fender, oil tank, battery, and the crankcase, transmission, etc, until I got here to the engine. Why? Because the right exhaust has this hole for this one to fit, and they wouldn't match. I mean, I cannot remember, I think it was most the front. This exhaust pipe was completely out of alignment of that hole. So for me the problem was with the engine, the placement of the engine, and this is why I don't like the way Tamiya made this engine fitment into the frame, because it is glued, and I mean, you don't have an exact position for it. So as I decided in the beginning that I was going to do the bike step by step, I came across with this problem later on. Because, I mean, my advice is, if you're building this kit, don't go step by step. You have some parts where you will have to test fitting some of the other parts that come a long way ahead. So, let's suppose you're going to glue the engine. You can, before all the other steps, the rear suspension, the oil tank, battery, etc., you can put the exhaust, because it won't block anything. So what I did was, after disassembling everything, I've put the engine in place with no glue, just for testing purposes, and I aligned the exhaust so the engine was at that place combined with the exhausts. Then I've glued the engine. What happens is, the engine, when you assemble step by step, you try to put the engine perfectly aligned with the frame, and that's not the case. The engine is a tiny bit tilted to the right side, and that's why I didn't get a perfect match in the first time, because I aligned the engine perfectly. So I had to, as I said, disassemble everything, test fitted the engine with the exhaust, glued the engine, kept the exhaust, and then started to assemble everything all over again. And this is what I came across. I mean, it's gorgeous so far. I'm loving it. It's a mixed feeling of love and hate, because I'm really liking to look at it, but the problems I had so far makes me wanna take it out of here. But anyways, this is the update. Keep that advice in mind if you're building this bike. Don't do it step by step. Just when you come to some critical part that you know will have some influence later on, like the engine. Of course, the engine is almost the center of everything. Don't glue it immediately. Wait patiently, of course, because it's been a long way since I've glued the engine till the exhaust. But wait, and when you get to those parts where you have to combine with some part before, then you'll have the chance to make adjustments and put it all together perfectly without any problems. Okay, this is what I've made, and this is what I'm at this point. This is the fuel tanks and the side cases that I've already painted and applied 4 mist coats of clear. And why? I mean, I've learned how to use zero paints clear coat lacquer, but in this case, as you can see, it doesn't have a very shiny look, just a 50% one. And why I have to make it like this? I don't know what the problem is, but I always have a lot of issues when using zero paints, and it's not that they're bad paints, because they aren't. They're pretty good paints, but it's like I've always have to adapt every time I use different zero paint, because if I use the same technique as I always do, for example with gravity colors, I use the paint, do my 2, 3, 4 coats depending on the color, and then apply 3 or 4 mist coats of zero paint clear coat lacquer, and then start, after that third or fourth coat, I start to hose the clear so I get a good shine, and then I can sand it and polish it. What happens here? If I use that same technique, I don't know if the clear starts to activate the paint again or whatever. I'm not a chemist, so the paint starts to burn, and instead of this beige, it starts to get a little pinky or reddish in some spots. So I have to do this because I want to seal the paint, and tomorrow or the day after I start to use that usual technique. I go again with 3 or 4 coats, mist coats, and then I start to hose. That way I can make the paint look shiny without burning through the paint. And I'm saying this because I've tried using the normal technique and always ended up with some reddish parts. So that's it. Good news, update, lots of work in the bike still to come, and the sidecar will be a little piece too, with all that frame and suspension and brackets and whatever is in it. But as you can see, looks fantastic so far. So this is it, update. Let's keep going. Not a long way to go, but still a lot of work still in hand. So let's get going. Take care, guys, and see you later.